At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. And what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's get into today's story. The sound of shearing metal was the only music that mattered in the churn. A percussive blast of tortured alloys and hydraulic fluid spraying from ruptured lines. Tonight's conductor was Gridden the Adamant, his baton a 4-ton shear blade, his mech the cobalt scythe, piston its legs propelling its torso in a low, gliding dash that seemed too fast for its size. Its namesake chassis gleamed under the harsh arena lights of Harrow's Reach, a flawless monument to Telosian engineering. Its opponent, a lumbering, locally sourced brawler named the Scrap Grinder, was a testament to its own poor judgment. It swung a rusty demolition claw, a move so obvious Gridden could have countered it in his sleep. The cobalt scythe sidestep, its joints swiveling with silent, frictionless fluidity. Its smaller upper arms adjusted the energy flow to its primary plasma cannon while the massive lower limbs braced for counterattack. Gridden disdained the cannon. Using it would concede the Scrap Grinder was a threat. The fight was a testament, the fight was a statement, and the statement was contempt. He brought the shear blade around at a contemptuous arc. The high-frequency hum from the weapon sliced through the roaring crowd, and then through the Scrap Grinder's left leg at the hip joint. The severed limb tumbled away, trailing a rainbow slick of hydraulic fluid. The local favorite staggered, its pilot surely screaming in his haptic chair as phantom agony shot through his nervous system. The Gridden let the crippled machine stumble for a moment, a predator enjoying the hunt's final moments. He savored the collective groan from the thousands of spectators who had wagered their credits on the underdog. Their loss sweetened his victory. With a brutal flourish, he drove the cobalt scythe's shoulder into the Scrap Grinder's chest, crushing the cockpit. The fight was over. The referee's drone confirmed the pilot's link had flatlined after one last agonizing surge. Gridden's voice, a deep, resonant baritone, boomed from the mech's external speakers. "Another piece of junk for the heaps of this pathetic station." The crowd's Telosian sections erupted. The rest stared back, a gallery of sullen faces and torn betting slips. As the cobalt scythe took its victory lap, a plucky reporter from the Churn Carnage Weekly zipped her hovercam dangerously close.
Gurdon, an incredible victory. That's 29 straight wins. The question on everyone's mind is, can anyone on Harrow's Reach challenge you?
Gurdon's mech came to a halt. The cockpit's polarized canopy retracted, revealing the champion. He was an 8-foot-tall colossus, his skin a mosaic of interlocking metallic plates that shimmered like cobalt. His face was a smooth, sculpted mask, save for a vocalizer slit that opened over a series of grinding components in his throat. He laughed, a series of dry, grating clicks that sounded like fracturing metal. "Challenge me," he echoed, a translator implant turning the clicks into perfectly accented standard. "Look around you. Look at the pathetic machines they bring to face the pinnacle of Telosian martial engineering. They are too weak. They are too slow." He paused, sweeping his gaze over the jeering crowd. "And they rely on tricks and cheap tactics. Their methods provide only hollow victories."
The reporter pressed. What about the other species? The Griv have a reputation for ferocity, the Orpheans for their technical acumen, and the humans, they have a reputation. The smooth plates of Gurdon's face shifted, pulling back from the vocalizer slit in a clear sneer. "The humans," the word was a harsh mechanical hiss. "A race of scrappy, loud primates who strap engines to rust buckets and call them brawlers. They mistake stubbornness for strength. I would welcome a human challenger. It would be a short, amusing lesson in galactic hierarchy." He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial growl that the comms picked up with perfect clarity. "Tell them to bring their best. It's irrelevant. I am untouchable. The sound of a micro-welder was the only music Mace Riley cared for these days. A controlled, focused hiss, the antithesis to the chaotic roar that still echoed in his quiet moments. He held the delicate atmospheric sensor from a Hall-master freighter under a magnified lens, his scarred and calloused hands holding the tool steady, the tip hovering a millimeter from the component. His garage, the Ratchet's Nest, occupied a tucked-away spot in the industrial sector of Harrow's Reach, a cavernous space that hummed with machines and smelled of stale coffee. Racks of tools lined the walls, each one clean, each one in its proper place. Order, control. That's what he had now. A quiet, predictable existence where the only feedback he got was the quiet snap of a component seating correctly. In a dusty monitor in the corner, the broadcast from the churn played on mute. He could feel the fight's rhythm and the vibrations that traveled through the station's deck plates. He ignored it, focusing on the polychromic sealant he was applying to a hairline fracture in the sensor's casing. Below the muted violence, a news ticker scrolled with an update. Botched military transport recovery in the furthermost shipping lanes, casualties reported. Just another day on the edge of civilized space. The garage door's pneumatic hiss broke his concentration. The sound was unmistakable. Only one person on Harrow's Reach had the audacity to enter like he owned the place he had nearly bankrupted 3 times. "Mace, my boy, my champion, my golden goose." Sal Mendoza boomed, filling the high-ceilinged space. He wore a synth-leather jacket that was a decade out of style, a wide, untrustworthy grin fixed on his face. Mace kept his focus on his work. He finished applying the sealant, his focus absolute. "The freighter captain's paying on delivery, Sal. Spend it after delivery." "Money, my dear Mace. This is bigger than money." Sal swept a hand through the air, nearly knocking over a tray of sorted ball bearings. "This is about legacy, redemption. The crowds roar, chanting your name." "The only thing I want to hear roaring is the fusion core on that freighter when it leaves my dock," Mace said, his voice low. He looked up from his work, his expression flat, his eyes tired. Sal's smile held firm. He slid onto a stool opposite the workbench, his energy a stark contrast to the garage's quiet hum. "I saw the fight tonight. Gurdon, another win. The whole station's talking. They say he's invincible. Good for him. He's arrogant," Sal pressed, leaning forward. "He's sloppy. He relies on that fancy tech. His experiences in the arena, a place with rules. You know how to fight when there are none. Remember the Hellas Rumble in Iridu? They said Jawbone was unbeatable. You took him apart piece by piece with one arm and a prayer." Mace set his welder down and wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag. He deliberately pushed a stray lock of graying hair off his forehead, tracing the edge of a faint, puckered scar near his temple. "I'm done with the ring, Sal. Mace, listen." "No, you listen." Mace met his old manager's eyes. "The ring took enough. It gets none." Sal's salesman bravado cracked. He sighed, the sound deflating him slightly. That look, that scar. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small data chip. He slid it across the workbench, where it came to a stop next to the freighter sensor. "Just watch it," Sal said, his voice softer now. "He called us out, Mace. He called all of us out." He got up and walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the control panel. "They've forgotten what a human can do in the cockpit of a brawler. Remind them how we write that history." The door hissed shut, leaving Mace alone. For a long moment, he stared at the data chip. He resisted watching it. It threatened to reawaken the past that he had spent 5 years burying. But Sal was right about one thing. He was stubborn. With a curse under his breath, he picked up the chip and slotted it into his monitor. Gurdon's hulking metallic form filled the screen. Mace watched the boast, his face impassive as the alien champion dismissed his entire species as a joke. A race of scrappy, loud primates who strap engines to rust buckets. and call them brawlers. Mace's jaw tightened. A familiar heat coiled in his gut, his right hand resting on the steel workbench curled into a fist, the knuckles of his scarred hand growing pale with pressure. He held it for a beat, a breath, a lifetime. Then, with a slow, deliberate effort, he forced his fingers to uncurl, smoothing his palm flat against the cool metal. The fight was over. He had to believe that. The illusion of peace lasted less than a day, shattered by a presence instead of a roar. A silhouette so large it blocked out the station's perpetual twilight fell over the entrance to the ratchet's nest. Mace was calibrating a cargo drone's inertial dampeners when the light from the garage entrance dimmed. He looked up. Standing in the doorway was Callus, and behind him, his two enforcers, a pair of hulking slab-like beings from a high-gravity world. They were walking statements of intent. Callus himself was a Koran, a species known for their shrewd business acumen. He fixed his dark, unblinking eyes on Mace. Below them, a pair of slitted pits oscillated, reading the room's kinetic energy and thermal variations. He stepped into the garage, his movements light for a creature of his bulk. A sudden silence fell over the workshop. Everyone stopped working. Callus had that effect on people.
Miss Riley.
Callus's voice was a low, gravelly sound modulated by his translator.
A pleasure to see you are keeping busy. Diligence is an admirable quality.
Mace powered down the dampener and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. Callus, if you're here for a tune-up, my rates have gone up. A smirk formed on Callus's thin mouth.
I am here on business. It concerns your partner, Salvador Mendoza.
Sal emerged from the back office, his face pale. At the sight of Callus, he froze, his usual charismatic energy vanishing. Callus, my friend, I was about to call you. Sal blustered, his voice an octave too high.
You lie.
Callus stated flatly. He took another step into the garage, surveying every detail. The half-finished projects, the expensive diagnostic equipment, the support beams, the structural integrity.
Mr. Mendoza made a wager on last night's churn match, a significant wager. He was optimistic about the scrap grinder's chances.
Mace looked at Sal. The color had completely drained from his friend's face. Sal, what did you do? Sal's throat worked. I thought I saw an angle, Mace. I did. Callus continued, his voice calm.
He was so optimistic, in fact, that he used this fine establishment as collateral.
He gestured around the garage.
The deed, the equipment, the lease on the station real estate. All of it.
He paused.
The debt is now mine, and it is due.
Mace's stomach went cold. This was it. The big one. The one beyond Sal's charm. He looked from Callus's impassive faces to Sal's terrified one. How much?
Enough that you would have to repair every freighter at the station for the next 10 years to cover the interest alone,
Callus said. Sal found his voice, a desperate, reedy thing. There's a way out. The champion's purse. The next contest. It's huge. Enough to clear the debt and then some. We just need a fighter. He looked at Mace, pleading with his eyes. Callus let out a dry chuckle.
You would wager again to pay a wager. A bold strategy.
He stepped closer to Mace and narrowed his primary eyes with calculation.
However,
he tilted his massive head.
The idea has a certain symmetry.
The loan shark, the bookie, was thinking. Mace could practically see the calculations happening behind the alien's gaze.
Scraping this garage for parts is pocket change,
Callus mused, more to himself than to them.
A predictable low-yield return. But a story is where the real money is.
He settled his gaze on Mace again, and a flicker of genuine interest sparked in his gaze.
The forgotten champion. The old warrior dragged out of retirement for one last fight against an unbeatable foe. The human underdog against the arrogant Telosian. This is more than a fight. It's a narrative. This is a prime betting event.
He clasped his hands behind his back.
I will accept your terms, Mr. Mendoza. One fight, winner take all. The next championship slot in 3 weeks.
Sal let out a shaky breath of relief. Thank you, Callus. You will see a return on this.
One moment.
Callus cut him off.
I am a businessman. I invest in profitable narratives. I will defer the debt, but I take a controlling interest in you.
He pointed a thick finger at Sal.
In him.
He pointed at Mace.
In the brawler. I control all promotion, all media rights, and my syndicate will set the odds and handle all wagers. You're fighting for me now.
Callus's eyes fixed on Mace.
Win, and you are clear. Your garage is yours, the debt forgiven. Lose, and I will take everything. The garage, your future earnings. Your brawler will be scrap, and your friend.
He glanced at Sal.
We'll spend a long time learning about current contract law in one of my deep space mining operations.
He let that hang in the air for a moment.
Do we have an agreement?
Mace looked at the workshop, at the young mechanics who depended on them, at Tamsin, who had just appeared in the office doorway, worry tightening her features. He looked at Sal, pathetic and desperate, but still a friend. He met Callus's gaze. You have your fighter. Later that night, the Ratchet's Nest main bay was dark, save for a single spotlight aimed at the far corner. Mace stood before a colossal shape shrouded in a heavy, dust-caked tarp. With a grunt, he pulled the cover, the fabric sliding to the floor in a cloud of dust and stale air. The scrap heap. The machine was ugly. A bipedal chassis of an older, heavier design, a relic from an era before energy shields and plasma cannons were standard. Its armor was a patchwork of mismatched plates covered in weld scars and the ghost of old paint jobs. It looked assembled from the wreckage of a dozen other brawlers. In a way, it had. But its core systems, the parts that mattered, were solid. And its right arm was a masterpiece of kinetic engineering. A massive piston-driven battering ram that had earned Mace his nickname, the Pile Driver. He ran a hand over the dented cockpit hatch, the cold metal a familiar touchstone. He could almost feel the haptic interface's phantom thrum, the machine's ghostly weight settling on his shoulders. He could almost smell the treated air and the faint metallic taste of his own blood. You're not doing this. Tamsin spoke, her voice cutting through the silence. She stood at the light's edge with her arms crossed. Her face was tight with anger. But fear was plain in her eyes. Grease smudged her cheek, and she'd pulled her dark hair back in a messy but efficient knot. We have to, Tamsin, Mace said, his back still to her. No, we don't. Sal made a mess. Sal can clean it up. We sell the garage. We start over somewhere else, somewhere without fighting pits. Callus owns the debt. There's nowhere to run. He turned to face her. It's one fight. One fight is all it took last time. Her words fractured emotion overriding her usual composure. Do you remember? I still do. I was the one who pulled you out of that cockpit. You were catatonic, Mace, screaming. The feedback surge nearly killed you. Tears filled her eyes. And Nico. Nico's still in that coma. The name settled in the air between them, heavy and unwelcome. "The haptic interface in this thing is lethal," Tamsin said, her voice low and intense. "The safeties are a lie, and the core processor has a macro fracture that defied all my attempts to repair it. Back then, this was still a two-seat chassis. That same failure put Nico in a coma. It's unstable. You push it, it'll happen again." Mace walked towards her, his movements weary. "I know the risk." "Do you?" She shot back. "Or have you stopped caring?" He stopped in front of her. The genuine fear in her eyes was playing, the fierce protection she had always shown him. She was his oldest friend, his conscience. "They'll take the garage, Tamsin. Everything we built. They'll take Sal." He let out a long, slow breath. "I need your help. I'll earn your forgiveness later. I need you to get it running." She stared at him, her jaws set. For a long minute, the only sound was the station's life support hum. She sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Fine," she bit out. "I'll help you power this cursed thing up. But on one condition." She jabbed a finger into his chest. "I put a new diagnostic suite on the interface. The instant I see power fluctuation, the instant it looks like it's going to overload, I pull the plug. I don't care if you're in the middle of a swing. I don't care if Gurdon has you cornered. I kill the link. Is it a deal?" Mace looked into her fierce, worried eyes and saw the only way this would happen. "Deal," he said. Hey. Sorry to interrupt your story and fall out of wherever I fell out of. But, I just want to say really quick that I really do like this story, and I would love it even more. Hey, I know you. Yeah, you've been here before. Well, anyway, thanks for coming in again. But I would love it even more if you like this story and let them know about it. Because every time a video gets a like, a squirrel gets its nuts. Okay, I gotta go. Bye. Gurdon the Adamant was holding court. The press event took place in a high-end lounge overlooking the churn, a place of polished chrome and expensive intoxicants far removed from the arena floor's grime. He was basking in the polychromic glare of a dozen media drones, recounting his flawless victory with the easy confidence of a warrior aristocrat.
"The creature's tactics were simplistic,"
he was saying, his vocalizer clicking with amusement.
"It demonstrated the typical failings of its class, a reliance on brute force without the slightest understanding of strategic—"
The sound was small, but it cut through the room. Sal Mendoza, having bluffed his way past security with a well-forged press credential, stood in the doorway. He wore his finest, most reflective suit, a portable holo projector in his hand. Gurdon's facial plate shifted in annoyance.
"The public forum has concluded."
"Yeah, I have one more item for the agenda," Sal said, a performer's grin spreading across his face. He clicked a button on the projector. A grainy, life-sized image flickered to life in the room's center. A younger Mace Riley stood next to the scrap heap in its prime, grinning, holding a massive championship trophy, looking every bit the brawling king he once was.
"Gurdon the Adamant,"
Sal announced, his voice ringing with the performer's confidence. "On behalf of the human race, which you so eloquently insulted, and in the name of classic competition, I issue a formal challenge." He swept his arm towards the hologram. "From humanity's forgotten champion, Mace, the pile driver Riley." The reporters murmured, their drones angling for a better shot. Gurdon stared at the younger Mace's image. He studied the battered mech, the confident human. Then he looked at Sal, the aging, flashy promoter. His annoyance melted into amusement. He rose to his full, intimidating height.
"This is your champion. This relic."
He let out another series of grating clicks.
"A human who last fought in the ring. How many years ago? 5, 6?
True skill endures," Sal said smoothly. Goading considered it for a moment. Then a predatory interest showed in his eyes. Crushing another no-name brawler was sport. Humiliating a former champion, a representative of a species he so openly despised, was a statement. This was an opportunity to solidify his legend.
Well,
Goading declared, his voice booming.
I accept this pathetic challenge. It will be an honor to personally demonstrate the gulf in quality between a Telosian warrior and a human brawler.
He looked directly into the nearest media drone's lens.
I hope your champion has good medical insurance. He will require it.
The first time Mace linked with the scrap heap, it felt like returning to a cold, familiar home. The connection was there, but the link was sluggish, stiff. A dull ache started behind his left eye, the injury's ghost. He stepped. The brawler slammed its massive metal foot into the training bay's reinforced floor with a clumsy, echoing clang. He tried a simple jab. The piston-powered arm shot forward with a hiss, but the arm was slow, the timing off. A deep, frustrating disconnect yawned between his intent and the machine's execution. Tamsin's voice, cold and professional, crackled over the comms. Training drones launched. 3 sleek, disc-shaped drones zipped into the bay. They were fast, agile, and armed with low-power lasers designed to test reaction times. The scrap heap relied on its thick hull for protection. The first drone fired. Mace tried to raise the brawler's left arm to block, but the limb moved with agonizing slowness. The laser bolt scored a bright line across the mech's chest plate. The other 2 targets zipped past, peppering its back. Alarms, soft and simulated, chimed in the cockpit. "I'm slow," Mace grunted, frustration lacing his voice. "You're rusty," Tamsin corrected from the control booth. "The brawler's rusty. The whole damn operation's rusty." He growled and lunged for the nearest drone. It danced away effortlessly. He spent the next hour lunging at targets that danced away from his clumsy swings. The drones defeated him soundly. By the time he unlinked, sweat was pouring down his face and his entire body ached with a deep, unfamiliar fatigue. While Mace fought to reclaim his instincts, Tamsin worked. She crawled through the brawler's interior, rerouting power conduits that had frayed with age. She slapped salvaged armor plates over the hull's weakest points, securing them with welds that were ugly but brutally strong. She slathered polychromic industrial-grade sealant over 1,000 microfractures, complaining under her breath the entire time. "This is like trying to patch a pressure hole with gum," she muttered, her voice echoing from inside an access crawlway. "The whole superstructure has stress fractures. We're sending a patched-up freighter to fight a warship." After a week of grueling work, things were better. Mace was moving with more confidence, the rust flaking away to reveal the muscle memory beneath. He could now consistently swat the training drones out of the air. Tamsin had managed to reinforce the chassis and squeeze another 10% of power out of the aging fusion core. But they both knew this was a losing strategy. They stood in the bay one evening watching the replay of one of Goading's fights on a large monitor. The cobalt scythe moved with a lethal efficiency that made Mace's progress feel insignificant. "He's too fast," Mace said, his voice flat. "His tech is just better. Shields, targeting computer, reaction time. A direct confrontation is certain destruction." Tamsin chewed on her lip, scanning the wireframe models and energy flow diagrams scrolling beside the fight footage. "We'll lose a straight fight. The scrap heap is a dump truck, and he's piloting a military interceptor. We need an edge, something he'll overlook, an exploit." She pointed to the screen. "His machine is perfect, too perfect. Perfection is brittle. It breaks when it meets something imperfect." She started running simulations, tapping out a rapid sequence on the console. We need to find a flaw in that perfection. The official weigh-in was a media spectacle. The 2 mechs stood in the Churn Arena's center under 1,000 brilliant spotlights. The cobalt scythe was an immaculate killing machine, its cobalt armor polished so brightly it reflected the spotlights. It looked like it had just rolled off a military production line. Next to it, the scrap heap looked assembled from a landfill. The patchwork armor, the visible weld scars, the mismatched paint. It stood as a monument to desperation and stubbornness. A low murmur rippled through the gathered press and VIPs. Some of them were laughing. Mace and Gurdon stood on a raised platform before their machines. The physical disparity was almost as stark. Gurdon towered over Mace, a mountain of alien plating and muscle. He stood with a confidence that seemed to draw the light and sound towards him.
So, this is the great human champion,
Gurdon said, his voice thick with disdain. He looked Mace up and down, then gestured dismissively at the scrap heap.
A relic piloting a relic. My ancestors hunted larger, more dangerous things than you for sport, human.
Mace kept his expression neutral. He fixed his gaze below Gurdon's face, studying his stance. The way he distributed his weight, the subtle shift of his larger arms, looking for a tell, any hint of a warrior behind the bravado. Arrogance was all he found. He met the Telosian's gaze, his own eyes calm and steady. He met the insult with a quiet stare. Just a simple, quiet statement.
The bigger they are,
Mace said, his voice low and clear,
the more pieces they break into.
For a fraction of a second, Gurdon's facial plates tightened in surprise. The human stood his ground. Then the moment passed. The Telosian scoffed, a dry rasp of sound, and turned his back, striding away in silence. "I'm running a full diagnostic one more time," Tamsin said, her voice tight with tension. "I have my doubts about that core holding under combat stress." Mace had already strapped himself into the cockpit, the haptic interface's cool gel comforting to his skin. "It'll hold. You made it hold. Optimism won't re-spoil a melted reactor, Mace. Let me do my job." On the main screen, lines of code scrolled past as the diagnostic program delved into the scrap heap's soul. Everything was green. Power levels stable. Actuators responding with intolerance. Armor integrity green across all patch sections. Then the report's small section flashed yellow. Haptic interface processor. Temperature's running hot, Tamsin noted. It's likely just the ambient heat from the core. Run a combat simulation, low intensity. I want to see how it handles a load. Mace nodded, his hands finding the control's familiar grips. He initiated the simulation, a simple sparring sequence against a virtual opponent. The scrap heap moved in the training bay, its motions crisp and responsive. The connection was solid. "Push it," Tamsin commanded over the comms. "Ramp it up to 70%. Mace complied. He threw a combination, a jab, followed by a powerful right cross in the piledriver arm. The brawler responded instantly. He dodged a simulated plasma blast, the movement smooth. He was feeling it now, the old rhythm coming back. 90%, Tamsin ordered. He pushed the machine harder, the movements becoming a blur. He dove the virtual opponent back, slamming it against the simulated wall. For a second, the old thrill returned, the adrenaline of combat. Then, the world flickered. A jolt, sharp and blinding, shot through the haptic link. It felt like a live wire pressed to his temple. Mace cried out, tearing his hands from the controls to grip his head. Alarms blared in the cockpit, a shrill, piercing shriek. The phantom ache behind his eye exploded into real pain. Images flashed behind his eyelids, the twisted wreckage of his old brawler, the smell of burning electronics, Nico's unresponsive face. "Mace! Mace! Respond!" The power cut out. The simulation vanished. The cockpit lights went to emergency red. The haptic interface went cold and dead against his skin. Tamsin's face appeared on his secondary screen, pale and terrified. "What happened? Talk to me." "Feedback," Mace gasped, the pain already receding to a dull throb against his skull. Just like before." Tamsin was already pulling up the diagnostic logs, her work-roughened hands racing across her console, her expression hardened. "Oh no. What is it?" She looked at him, her eyes wide with dread. "It's the processor. The final diagnostic just came through. It's a microfracture in the main synaptic coil. Simulation stress must have propagated it." Her throat tightened. "It's the exact same failure. The same one that put Nico in a coma." She took a deep, shaky breath, her professionalism barely masking her fear. "The brawler is a death trap. I'm scrubbing it. The fight is off." The air in the underlevels of Harrow's Reach was thick and cloying. This was a place the official maps pretended to omit. A black market bazaar, a nexus of illicit trade where one could buy anything for the right price. Mace and Sal moved through the throng, keeping their heads down. They stopped at a stall cluttered with scavenged military tech and experimental prototypes, all gleaming under a glitching neon sign that read Zell's Curious. The proprietor, Zell, was an Orphean, a spindly, multi-jointed being with large eyes, black and liquid, that assessed a customer's net worth instantly.
Gentlemen,
Zell chirped, his translator emitting the sound of synthesized chimes.
seeking to upgrade your technological portfolio or perhaps downgrade an opponent's.
We need a haptic processor, Sal said directly. Military grade, if you have it. Something that can handle a heavy load without frying.
Zell tilted his head, his long, delicate fingers tapping on his computer.
Ah, a connoisseur. Such items are rare and expensive.
He named a price that made Sal's face fall. The price was more than they had, more than they could hope to get.
We're short that kind of credit, Mace said flatly.
Zell gave a six-limbed shrug.
A pity. Perhaps a nice plasma pistol, a small personal black hole generator. Good for waste disposal.
As Zell turned to haggle with another customer, Mace scanned the shelves behind the counter. Illegal weapons, experimental shield emitters, and then, tucked away in a dusty corner, he spotted it. A metal cylinder, about the size of his forearm, wrapped in coiling wires and covered in warning labels. It pulsed with a faint, unstable light.
What is that?
Mace asked, pointing. Zell followed his gaze. A flicker of something, greed, interest, crossed his face.
Ah, that. A special item. A synaptic overdrive coil. An unstable military prototype, I'm told. It overrides the standard safety regulators to overclock the haptic link. It boosts processing speed, reaction time tenfold, they say.
Tenfold? Sal breathed. His eyes were wide.
But it is temperamental. Zell continued. The power surge is immense. An uncontrolled surge would produce a feedback loop that would,
He made a delicate gesture with one of his hands.
liquefy the pilot's brain.
Mace stared at the coil. The device was a suicide switch, but also their only chance.
How much?
Zell named a price even more exorbitant than the processor.
It's a unique piece, a collector's item.
Defeated, they turned to leave when Mace had an idea. The idea was a long shot, a desperate gamble.
We lack credits, but we have technology.
He keyed a command on his personal handheld console and projected a holographic schematic onto the counter. The schematic showed the design of the pile driver, his unique piston system, a triple redundant kinetic design that gave the scrap heap its legendary punching power. An older, brutally effective design, a masterpiece of mechanical engineering. Zell's large black eyes widened. He leaned in, studying the schematics with the reverence of a true tech connoisseur. He traced the power conduit's lines, the magnetic accelerator's arrangement.
Ingenious, he whispered. The power-to-force ratio is remarkable. A lost art.
He looked up from the schematic, his decision made.
We have a trade.
Tamsin's fury was cold and silent, which was far more terrifying than her shouting. She stared at the synaptic overdrive coil resting on her workbench as if it were a live explosive.
You brought that thing into my garage,
she said, her voice quiet, each word sharpened to a point.
Tamsin, listen.
Sal started, trying to be charming.
It's a calculated risk. Get out,
she said without looking at him. Sal opened his mouth, saw the look on her face, and wisely retreated from the workshop. Tamsin turned to Mace.
A suicide switch? That's your brilliant solution? You want me to install a suicide switch into the machine that almost killed you?
I want you to give us a fighting chance, Mace countered. This is the only way we can match his speed.
There is no we in this, Mace! This is you, chasing your past and endangering us all! I refuse to install it!
She slammed her hand down on the workbench. Mace looked at the anger in her face, and for the first time, he met it.
I've been running from that fight for 5 years,
he said, his voice holding the weight of a confession. he now realized he was ready to make. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The spark, the surge, Nico's face. I see him every single day. I retired because I was afraid of the machine, of the link, of myself. He stepped closer. This goes beyond the debt, Tamsin. It's about facing that memory. It's about getting back into that cockpit and proving I can still control the machine instead of letting its memory control me. He looked from the coil to her. I know it's dangerous. That's why I need you. I only trust you to install this thing right, to give me a chance of surviving it. He met her eyes, his own pleading. I trust you to build it right. And I'm asking you to trust me to handle it. Tears filled Tamsin's eyes, a mixture of frustration, fear, and deep, painful understanding. She recognized the torment he'd been hiding from behind his gruff exterior for 5 years. This was a reckoning, a deliberate confrontation, rather than simple recklessness. She wiped at her face with the back of a greasy hand, her resolve crumbling. Damn you, Mace Riley, she whispered. She picked up the coil, her expression shifting from anger to the intense focus of an engineer facing a complex problem. Fine, I'll install it. She turned it over in her hands, but I'm building in a manual emergency vent, a physical purge valve. If you push that thing too far, even for a microsecond, feedback is going to build faster than the safeties can handle. That vent will be your only hope. But if you have to use it, the coil will be slack. You'll get one burst, that's it. She looked him dead in the eye. And I'm serious about the brain liquefying part. You push it in the red, you're dead. Understood? Understood, Mace said. Breath escaped him, long and slow. Thank you, Tamsin. For the next 3 days, Mace stayed away from the scrap heap's controls. He sat in the command center's darkness, living in the past. He watched every recorded fight of Girder's career, dozens of them, from his first amateur bouts to his latest championship defense. He was stalking his opponent, hunting for a weakness in a record of flawless victories. Every fight was a record of perfect execution. Gurdon's power management was flawless. His tactical awareness was absolute. Every movement served a purpose. Every attack landed without warning. There's gotta be something, Mace muttered, scrubbing through the last fight's footage for the 20th time. Tamsin, who was analyzing the arena's public schematics on a nearby console, looked over. Maybe there isn't. Maybe he really is that good. She tapped her screen. Speaking of which, the arena is as much of a wreck as our brawler. The whole place is a hazard held together with emergency welds. Look at this. The main power conduits for the entire grid is right behind these cheap composite wall panels. One good hit in the wrong place, knock out the lights for the whole sector. Mace's focus remained on the screen. He narrowed his eyes, slow it down, frame by frame. Gurdon executed his favorite finishing move, a brutal, overwhelming combo that utilized all 4 of his arms in a dizzying flurry of strikes. A plasma blast to create an opening, a sheer blade slash to cripple a limb, followed by 2 massive piston-driven punches to shatter the cockpit. Devastating and unstoppable. But there, right there. Freeze it, Mace whispered. The screen froze, capturing the exact moment after the combo landed. For a single instant, all 4 of Gurdon's arms hung fully extended. All of his primary weapon systems had just fired. He directed all his power outwards. Look at his shield frequency, Mace said, pointing. Tamsin brought up the relevant data. They're cycling, she said, diverting power back to the core to recharge the weapons. It's standard procedure. Yeah, but look at the left side, Mace pressed. Right over the primary shield generator. He zoomed in on the telemetry, revealing a tiny fractional delay. A flicker in the energy signature as the system prioritized recharging the massive arm-mounted cannons over reinforcing the shield. The vulnerability window was less than half a second. The flaw was there. A desperate, high-risk plan formed in Mace's mind. This was a matter of survival, a test of endurance rather than a slugfest. It meant taking the beating and goading the arrogant champion into using his ultimate attack. I can't outfight him, Mace said, a slow grin spreading across his face. But I can make him beat himself. He looked at Tamsin. That custom ammo you were working on. The kinetic slug designed to punch through shields. Tamsin's eyes widened as she understood. The shield breaker. I mothballed it. I thought the project was a waste of resources. You couldn't get close enough to use it. Get it ready, Mace said. We're only going to get one shot. The long walk down the tunnel to the arena felt heavy. The crowd's roar was a bass rumble that vibrated in Mace's bones. The scrap heap felt like an extension of his own body, the haptic link like part of his own nervous system. He could feel the concrete's floor cold through its massive feet. Sal walked alongside the brawler's leg, looking up at the cockpit. For once, his usual salesman bluster was gone. You remember what I told you before the Hellas rumble? He asked, his voice almost lost in the noise. You told me to try not to get killed in the first 30 seconds, Mace replied over the short-range comm. Right. Good advice, Sal said with a nervous chuckle. But I also told you that you were the best damn pilot I'd ever seen. That's still true, Mace. Go show that 8-foot crab what a human can do. He clamped his hand against the brawler's ankle, a futile but heartfelt gesture. Tamsin cut in over the private channel, calm and professional. Final checks are green, the coil is stable, but the monitor links directly to my board. You even think about pushing it before it's time and I'll know. She paused. Remember the plan. Survive the attack, then strike, and for God's sake, keep that coal out of the red. She softened her voice for a moment. Come back. You hear me? Loud and clear, Mace said. Ahead, the massive gates to the churn ground open, flooding the dark tunnel with brilliant light and a wall of sound. Mace took a slow, deep breath, the treated air from the cockpit filling his lungs. He flexed his hands, and 100 meters away, the scrap heap's massive metal fist closed in response. The gate opened fully. Time to fight. He walked into the light. Violence was the only start. Gurdon attacked the instant the scrap heap cleared the gate. The cobalt scythe crossed the arena floor with astonishing speed. Mace barely had time to register the incoming threat before the first plasma blast hit. It struck the scrap heap high on the chest, and the world became a blast of sensory overload. Through the haptic link, the impact was a phantom agony that exploded across Mace's torso. He grunted, fighting the instinct to clutch his own chest. Alarm screamed in the cockpit. The armor held, but the metal beneath screamed and buckled. Before he could recover, Gurdon was on him. A sheer blade flashed, and Mace twisted the brawler's torso, a desperate, instinctual move. The blade, meant for the cockpit, instead carved a deep gash across the scrap heap's left shoulder, shearing clean through the arm at the elbow. The limb's lower half, dead and useless, crashed to the arena floor.
Damage report.
Mace barked, fighting the feedback surge.
Left arm is gone.
Tamsin's voice was strained but steady.
Main torso armor is compromised. He's too fast, Mace. You have to make some space.
Mace was trying. He backpedaled, bringing the brawler's remaining arm up in a defensive posture. The cobalt scythe pressed its attack, a relentless sequence of blows. Punches landed like small demolitions, hammering the scrap heap, buckling armor, shattering components. The crowd roared, sensing a quick and brutal kill. This was the plan. Survive. But survival was proving to be a full-time, terrifying job. Gurdon was overwhelming. Mace absorbed the blows, learning the attack's rhythm, the strike's timing. He used the environment. With a powerful kick from the scrap heap's right leg, he slammed his foot into the base of a massive structural pillar. The pillar, old and corroded, groaned in protest. The move was risky, destabilizing his own footing, but it was all he had. What are you doing? Tamsin yelled over the comm. Improvising, Mace grunted. He ducked behind the groaning pillar just as another plasma blast streaked past, missing him by inches. He kept moving, weaving through the debris-strewn area, using the environment as his shield. He kicked up clouds of metallic dust from the floor to obscure his opponent's sensors. A small creature in a cage with a predator. His only hope was to be too quick and clever to be caught. He was bloodied and broken, but still standing.
Gurdon's frustration showed in his movements. His military strikes became wider, more aggressive. The quick, clean kill he had promised his fans was turning into a messy chase. Now, as Gurdon charged again, Mace stood his ground next to a section of the arena wall. The section Tamsin had pointed out on the schematics. It looked solid, but it was just cheap composite paneling over a tangle of the station's vital systems. Mace feigned a stumble, his brawler lurching to one side as if its leg actuator had failed. A clumsy, obvious move. Bait. Gurdon took it. He saw the opening and charged, abandoning tactics for overwhelming power. He lunged, sheer blade held high for a killing blow. Mace pivoted away at the last moment, letting the cobalt-sized charge carry it past him. As the cobalt brawler thundered by, Mace swung the scrap heap's good right arm, not at his opponent, but at the wall. The pile driver's fist, driven by its powerful pistons, slammed into the composite paneling. The wall shattered, exploding inwards in a shower of debris and dust. A colossal, crackling arc of raw energy followed the impact. Blue-white lightning erupted from the breach, and the arena lights spasmed. Mace's sensors went wild, detecting a massive, unshielded power signature. He had sheared away the cheap armor and exposed a primary power conduit for the arena's grid. Gurdon faltered, his charge broken as his sensors screamed about the unexpected energy surge. In that moment of hesitation, Mace struck. He drove the pile driver fist, now crackling with residual energy from the conduit, into the side of the cobalt-sized right leg joint. The hit was solid, but far from a knockout blow. Stressed metal shrieked, the leg joint buckled without breaking. The cobalt-sized staggered, its perfect balance momentarily lost. A collective gasp rose from the arena. The Untouchable champion had been struck. He had stumbled. The blow did more damage to Gurdon's pride than to his machine. A roar of rage blasted from the cobalt-sized external speakers. The Telosian cast aside technical style for raw fury. He charged, his forearms poised to strike, ready to pulverize the insignificant human who had dared to scratch his paint. This, Mace thought, a grim smile on his face as the huge brawler bore down on him. This is what I was waiting for. "He's furious," Tamsin said, her voice tight with a mix of terror and awe. "He's coming in hot and stupid. This is your chance, Mace." "I see it." Mace grunted, bracing for the impact. He presented the bait. He allowed the scrap heap to sag, feigning a power failure in its core systems. The brawler's head drooped, its one remaining arm hanging limp. He made himself an irresistible target. Gurdon consumed by rage, saw only the kill. He charged, seeing only the final blow. He launched himself forward, initiating his signature forearm combination, the same move Mace had watched 100 times in the dark. The plasma cannon fired. The shear blade slashed. The two massive fists drew back for the final, crushing punches. The world narrowed to this single critical moment. "Now, Tamsin," Mace said, his voice calm. "Activating the coil. You have 1 second, maybe less. Good luck, Mace." He slammed his thumb down on the activator. The world fractured into a stream of tactical data. The synaptic overdrive coil flooded his brain, bypassing every safety protocol. The incoming plasma blast became a lazy, glowing ball of light. The slashing shear blade hung in the air. The clumsy, lumbering machine from moments before vanished, replaced by something swift and lethal. It moved in a staccato burst of motion, energized by the data torrent pouring through the haptic link. Mace's thoughts became the brawler's actions instantly. He sidestepped the plasma blast. He ducked under the sheer blade. He weaved between the two descending fists, the wind from the passage buffeting his mech. He was inside Gurdon's guard, in the attack's calm center. And there it was, the opening, just as the simulator predicted. The half-second window of vulnerability on the cobalt-sized left side, its shield generator momentarily flickering as it rerouted power. Mace aimed the pile driver. He fired. With a tremendous crack, Tamsin's custom-built shieldbreaker slug shot from a concealed launcher in the pile driver's fist, a dense kinetic penetrator. It crossed a few meters between the brawlers instantly and struck the flickering energy shield. The shield detonated.
The generator overloaded, exploding in a brilliant shower of blue sparks and shattered components. The cobalt sights left side was now completely exposed. The coil sputtered. The fight snapped back to its brutal pace. The feedback hit Mace and his vision swam with black spots.
The coil is critical!
Tamsin screamed over the comms, her voice frantic.
The heat sinks are failing! You're redlining, Mace! Get out of there!
Mace could barely hear her. A high-pitched whine filled his ears, and blood trickled from his nose. The haptic link was feeding him waves of static and pain. The scrap heap was a wreck. Its left arm was gone, its armor was slag, and its systems were flickering on the edge of catastrophic failure. But Goading was hurt. The champion was stunned, his perfect machine damaged, its shield breached. For the first time, they were equals. Two broken fighters. Mace knew he had one move left. One final push before the coil or his own brain gave out completely. He could feel his consciousness fraying. Diverting all power. He rasped, his fingers moving deftly over the console, overriding Tamsin's frantic lockouts.
Mace! No! You can't! The feedback will kill you!
He ignored her. He shunted everything, weapons, life support, sensors, every last watt of power from the dying fusion core, and poured it into the synaptic overdrive coil. The power's gauge's needle shot past the red line and broke. A new surge, 10 times stronger than the first, flooded his nervous system. Pain, white and absolute, consumed him. But through the agony, he found a moment of clarity. He became the machine. To the spectators in the arena, what happened next defied the laws of motion. The ruined smoking scrap heap, a machine that looked ready for the scrapyard, launched itself forward with impossible speed. It was a streak of rust and metal, closing the distance to the stunned cobalt scythe in a single explosive instant. Goading, still reeling from the shield's detonation, tried to bring his weapons to bear. He was too slow. Mace aimed low, ignoring the head and chest. He threw the scrap heap's full, overclocked weight into a low-body tackle, slamming directly into the cobalt scythe's already damaged right leg. A horrific shriek of metal gave way, and the champion's mech lost its footing, stumbling backward, its arm flailing for a balance it could never regain. It was falling, but Mace had one more move. Using the last dregs of his impossible momentum, he guided the fall. He guided the champion's fall, aiming him. He shoved, he pushed, he steered the tumbling colossal machine directly towards the gaping hole in the arena wall. The back of the cobalt scythe's head slammed directly into the massive, exposed power conduit. First came a flash of brilliant, silent white light that bleached the arena of all color. A colossal surge of raw, untamed energy poured from the station's power grid directly into the advanced circuitry of the Telosian war machine. Every light on the cobalt scythe flashed once, impossibly bright, and then went dark. The mech seized for a moment, then went limp. A dead machine, its systems fried. It collapsed to the floor, inert and silent. A moment later, its task complete, the scrap heap shuddered, its own systems fried by the final desperate power surge. It tipped forward and crashed beside its vanquished foe, steam hissing from a dozen ruptured conduits. For a full 10 seconds, silence gripped the churn. The thousands of spectators, human and alien alike, stared at the two fallen giants, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The only sound was the crackle of dying electronics and the hum of the station's emergency power kicking in. Then, a single automated light blinked on, a green beacon above the motionless form of the scrap heap. The referee's drone had made its verdict. The arena erupted into a single deafening roar of disbelief, shock, and triumph. Medics and salvage crews swarmed the arena floor. One team swarmed the cobalt scythe, using plasma cutters to slice open the cockpit hatch. They pulled an unconscious Goading from his seat, his body limp, his expensive flight suit smoking. Another team rushed to the scrap heap. Tamsin was already there, sprinting across the floor, Sal stumbling behind her. They wrenched open the cockpit hatch. Mace slumped in his pilot's chair. Blood streamed down his nose and ears. His face was pale and drawn, but his eyes were open. He looked up, and through the cracked viewport of his helmet, Tamsin's tear-streaked, terrified face filled his view. He gave her a weak, bloody, triumphant grin. Sal arrived, gasping for breath. Seeing Mace conscious and alive, he burst into a bizarre, hiccuping sound that was half laugh, half sob. He screamed with joy, pounding his fist on the brawler's leg. High above, in a private viewing box, Callus the loan shark watched the chaos unfold. He took a long, slow sip of dark, viscous fluid from a glass. He watched the medics load Mace onto a stretcher. He watched the crowd chanting the human's name. He gave a single, slow nod of respect. He turned to his aide.
Pay the winners. The odds were long. Our profits will be substantial.
The debt was paid. Days later, the Ratchet's nest was a mess. Scattered tools and empty stimulant bulbs littered the workbenches, the air humming with the comfortable chaos of a business back in the black. On Tamsin's main workbench, next to a half-disassembled servo motor, sat a shimmering pile of credit chips. In the main bay, the scrap heap was a wreck. It was missing a limb, its armor was scorched and buckled, and it looked more like a piece of abstract sculpture than a fighting machine. But it was their wreck. Tamsin already stood at a console, drafting holographic plans to rebuild it. Stronger, faster, better. A news broadcast played on a nearby monitor, the volume low. A reporter stood outside a high-end medical facility on one of Harold Reach's more affluent levels. An upset that has sent shockwaves through the galactic fighting circuit, the reporter was saying. The formerly undefeated champion, Gurdon the Adamant, is reportedly in stable condition after the massive electrical surge disabled his brawler. We have an exclusive clip from his first conscious moments. The broadcast cut to a sterile-looking medical room. Gurdon was sitting up in a medical bed, a diagnostic collar around his neck. He looked groggy, his movements slow. A different reporter leaned in with a microphone. Gurdon, a stunning defeat. Can you give us your thoughts on the fight? The Telosian looked around the room, his eyes unfocused and confused. He blinked, his facial plates shifting sluggishly. He looked blankly at the camera, a deep, profound bewilderment on his face. He asked, his voice a hoarse croak.
What year is it?
Back in the garage, Sal, who watched over Mace's shoulder, let out a bark of laughter so loud it echoed through the entire workshop. It was a joyous, unrestrained sound. Tamsin looked over from her schematics, shaking her head, but a wide smile spread across her face. Mace leaned back in his worn-out office chair. He picked up a glass of something amber and strong that Sal had poured for him. He took a long, slow sip, the fire of it burning a clean path down his throat. For the first time in 5 years, the ghost in his head fell silent. He allowed himself a genuine, heartfelt smile.